Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today's space. It looks like, in anticipation of this space, the crypto hackers and ne'er-do-wells out there have generally been pretty busy in the last week or so. Quite a lot has happened on that front. So I imagine we will be discussing a few of those things today. But yeah, we also want to talk about some of the kind of threats to crypto, sort of more general threats, things like Russia and North Korea. We're going to have a look at some of the sort of big name hacks that have happened recently. And I must say, today's panel, who you'll meet very shortly, today's panel are an amazing set of people. We've got people from the FBI, the DOJ. We've also got a couple of Chainalysis people as well. So they're going to add some. They're going to have some fascinating insights to share about this particular topic, and I'd like to welcome, as ever, my friend and co-host, Dumpling. Dumpling, how are you doing?
Doing great, thanks, Guy. I know we had quite a few hacks this week, but so this space couldn't have come at a more timely time, really. So looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, unfortunately, hacks and exploits are something that has plagued crypto kind of almost from the beginning. I think we're now, just over 10 years, or just around the 10-year mark since Mount Gox collapsed. This sort of almost extinction level event for crypto, and of course that was very much kind of set in motion by the enormous hack of the exchange's wallets that the exchange staff didn't really notice was happening. And kind of ever since then, and of course before, but ever since, hacking has been unfortunately something that has plagued this entire industry, and I'm afraid is going to continue to plague it for some time to come, I believe. But that's just my particular take on it. So I'd be very interested to hear what our speakers today have to say about that, what their kind of long-term view on it is. But I think one of the things we want to get out of today's space is to give people listening, an idea of what's out there, what threats are out there and how they operate. And also, hopefully, leave people with some useful tips as to how they can stay safe, because security begins at home, as they say. So, Dumpling, do you want to sort of take the reins? And if our speakers are kind of all on board, I think we've got two or three have already joined. But Dumpling, do you want to introduce our speakers? Tell the audience a bit about who they're going to be hearing from today.
Yes, absolutely. So we don't have all the speakers yet. Meredith is going to be 5 minutes late, but that's fine. So before we start, let me give a bit of context. We wanted to do this space for a while. Obviously, we covered important topics like CBDCs, regulations, but perhaps very close to our own lives is hacks. It happens so much in crypto. So we wanted to do this, and with actual experts, from people who actually are involved in the investigations, from people who are involved in reading on-chain data and collaborating with these investigators, to hear from them. What's the experience like? What are the lessons we can take away from? And so we have 4 amazing speakers today. 2 of them are former special agents, and 2 of them are very experienced on-chain data analysts from Chainalysis. And the format today is we're going to have a 90-minute discussion. We're going to start by asking our own prepared questions to the guests, and the floor will open in about 30 minutes. So you have the first 30 minutes to sort of digest, to hear what they have to say, and prepare your own questions. Then we open the floor for you. You can directly start asking your questions to our guests. And we'll ask questions to our guests in an open manner, meaning all the guests feel free to jump into the conversation. take use of the hands up emoji, just like Zoom and Google Meets. If you feel like you want to jump in next, then we'll cue you. Housekeeping rules. Obviously, Coin Bureau Spaces has the high standard like Coin Bureau YouTube videos, as always. So we don't allow any form of shilling, any form of unproductive conversation. If you have questions, please be concise, be relevant, and there's no shilling allowed in this space. With that said, 3 areas we want to discover today. Number 1, we're talking about recent hacks, whether that be Mark Cuban, Vitalik, or most recently Mixin, Nansen, and Huobi. It's quite a lot of hacks recently. The second area we want to discover is Russian and North Korean hackers. What are they up to? What should we know about them? And finally is very interesting, privacy coins and mixers. What are they? How do they work? Decentralized and centralized privacy coins. What's that like? So we prepare those questions. We're looking forward to diving into that. A little bit about our guests. We have Lily. Lily is the CEO of Cat Labs. She had 10 years experience as special agent at U.S. Department of Justice. She's been focusing on the use of cryptocurrencies in violation of the U.S. anti-money laundering laws and Controlled Substances Act. Special focus on dark web and blockchain analysis to identify source of funds in AML and CSA investigations. We also have Meredith. Meredith is the Director of Crypto Investigations and Compliance at Forensic Risk Alliance. She has 6 years experience as FBI special agent. Interestingly, she's investigating nation-state-sponsored cyber attacks, so probably a lot she can talk about in terms of Russia and North Korea. We then have Valerie, the Director of Investigations at Chainalysis, and Julia, the Senior Investigator at Chainalysis with hands-on experience with investigating using on-chain data. So with that said, let's give a warm welcome to Lily, Valerie, Julia, and in a minute, Meredith. Lily, welcome to the space. And Julia, welcome. Valerie, welcome. I understand it's some of you's first Twitter space. That means you're officially working in tech. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I've never been here before, so super happy to be here and for this to be my first one.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I'm glad that given it's our first space, we all got on with no tech challenges. So glad to kick things off.
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And then Dumpling, I just joined as well. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining. Guy, so recently we had a lot of hacks, didn't we? In the last span of 5 days, Mixin, Huobi, Nansen, and perhaps more, Balancer as well. So do you want to ask the first and perhaps the most important question of today regarding recent hacks?
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Dumpling. And if I can just echo your sentiments, thank you to all our speakers for joining us today. It really is exciting to have people with such expertise joining, and to have you on your first space is a great honour. So thank you, everyone. I want to actually start by asking, Dumpling, you mentioned some of these hacks that have happened recently of particular protocols and companies. I wanted to focus on a couple that I think most people in crypto will have been aware of. The recent exploits of Vitalik Buterin and Mark Cuban. Vitalik, you may remember, his Twitter account was hacked, and Mark Cuban lost nearly $1 million, I think, not far off $1 million, when his MetaMask wallet was exploited. So my question is, it's a bit of a leading question, but if people as experienced as Vitalik and Mark Cuban can fall for can be exploited in this way, is there really any hope for the rest of us? What can we do to try and stay safe, to try and prevent these sorts of things happening to us? Lily, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So the the Vitalik SIM swap hack that happened recently, essentially his T-Mobile account was taken over by someone else, and that resulted in the hacker gaining access to his Twitter account and impersonating him and being able to social engineer, so to speak, people into giving him money by impersonating Vitalik, because Vitalik is a very trusted figure. So this is a very, very common attack, and a SIM swap attack is very deadly because many people use their phones to access many different types of accounts. This could be credit cards, bank accounts, cryptocurrency wallets. So many criminals will target SIM swap attacks for financial gain. And not only will they steal accounts, but they will also sell access to that phone number that they SIM swapped, a lot of times on the dark web, and also sometimes will extort the owner into paying a ransom to regain access back to their number. And the way they do that usually is by actually socially engineering the mobile service provider. So in this case, it was T-Mobile. So they would call the T-Mobile hotline, or they would sometimes even go in person. And prior to that, there's a lot of work involved in gathering as much private information about the victim as possible. So this could be anything from pet names, to birthdays, different things that you can potentially use to verify your account when the T-Mobile representative will ask you to verify your account. And once they successfully social engineer the T-Mobile representative, then they will successfully transfer your phone number to a SIM card that they control. And now they control your phone number. So let's say if you have two-factor authentication that goes to your mobile number, they have access to that. They can change your passwords. They can get access to a lot of your different accounts. So one of the best ways to prevent this from happening is, well, first of all, have different types of access controls to your T-Mobile account. So just make sure that all of the security features on T-Mobile, when somebody calls, for example, the T-Mobile customer service, that there's several layers of security that the person needs to go through in order to get verified. That's one, of course. And also just using smart online habits. Be wary of any phishing emails, suspicious links, because a lot of times that's how the hacker gains access to some of the personal information that they can use to then go and impersonate you and be able to gain access to your phone via your phone provider. Right. And also one of the most important things that we say is actually don't use your phone for two-factor authentication, because if you do get SIM swapped and you use your phone for two-factor authentication, basically the hacker owns your entire online identity, and they can gain access to many of your accounts, to including social media and bank accounts, etc.
If we don't use the phone for two-factor authentication, what would be a better device for that then?
Well, the most secure would be YubiKeys, so a hardware device to use for two-factor authentication. I would also say there's authenticator apps that you can use, but unfortunately, some authenticator apps will store your keys in the cloud, which is another attack vector. So if somebody actually gains access to the cloud environment where your keys are stored, essentially all of your authenticator keys can be exposed as well. But it's still less risky than using phone-based authentication.
Thank you, Lily. And that covers a lot of the social engineering part of the hack. Not all hacks are the same, right? The ones that happen to, for example, Mixin and Huobi, the bigger players in the space. I wonder, what do you think of that? This is a question to everyone in the panel. What are your thoughts here? Like Guy said, does that mean we're doomed? There's no way we can protect ourselves if the bigger guys are being hacked? Or are they have been doing something that make them vulnerable to such attacks?
I can jump in here. So what we have seen with a lot of these recent hacks, including Mixin, is that there is a Web 2 element to actually gaining access to the crypto that's being stolen. So what this really means for protocols and for just general users is that we really need to take a look at the entire security across all aspects of a protocol or of a user. So not just how are your keys being stored, but also what kind of websites are you interacting with, what kind of partners or different domain handlers or any of those kind of Web 2 elements are you using, and thinking about all those different vectors that can be compromised. I think that's something that in this space, when it's moving so quickly and there might be a lot of want to just ape into the next thing, there's not as much time maybe to think about, well, what am I actually doing? What am I interacting with? Who else is involved? And so we're seeing a lot more push on our side, on the investigation side, not just into what's happening on chain, but also what are the different security measures being taken with the websites, with anti-phishing of founders, and those kind of aspects.
Yeah, and I also want to add to that. I think education is really important, especially if you are custodying your own assets, right? You have cryptocurrency, which is an amazing technology that allows you to not have an intermediary, a trustless system, but that comes with its own risks. And that own risk is your responsibility to custody your own assets. So if you're like a high net worth individual, like Mark Cuban, for example, it would be very prudent for you to understand how your assets could be stolen, right? So just getting educated on the different attack vectors and the best way to secure your assets, if you are custodying your own assets, is key here. And for example, there's a recent trend called address poisoning, where the attacker will basically create a transaction with your account by using a wallet address that mirrors a recent transaction that you've made. Let's say you sent $200,000 from your MetaMask to Binance recently. So the hacker will essentially take the first few characters of your address, of your Binance address that you used, and then the last few characters, and will make the address look very similar. And then it will create a transaction with that address. Sometimes it'll be like a $0 token transaction. Sometimes it'll be a fake token, like a fake USDC token. So it'll make it look exactly like the transaction that you just made to Binance, for example. And what would happen is the next time you go and send money, if you don't pay attention and you just copy paste the address that you used in your last transaction, that's it. Now you're sending money to the hacker. So just little things like this, it's operational security, just making sure that you triple check the address that you're sending to. Copy pasting is very dangerous too. There's another hack that is very popular with that called clipboard hijacking, where the hacker hijacks via malware will hijack your clipboard. So if you copy an address that you want to send money to, the hacker will replace that address with their own address, and then you end up pasting the hacker's address instead of the address that you're intending to send to. So just operational security in general is very important when you're custodying your own assets, and of course, key management, key backup and recovery, what to do if your key is compromised, just generating the key or a seed phrase. All of these things are very important when you're custodying your own assets. And something that I recommend very highly is getting educated on CCSS, which is a cryptocurrency security standard, and it goes over exactly these things, essentially how to stay safe and make sure that your key management, your operational security is on point. And even if somebody gains access to your system, if you have your operational security and key management on point and key generation and storage on point, many times they won't be able to gain access to your funds, even if they compromised your cloud or they compromise something else. If your key is properly managed, many times they won't be able to get access to those assets.
Meredith and Valerie, have you anything to add to this?
I would say when it comes to scams, this sounds very trivial, but it kind of the old adage of if something seems too good to be true, it is. I mean, these, especially the nation state actors, they will sometimes, if they're targeting a high net worth individual, they will spend weeks on reconnaissance and learning your or months, and learning your online habits, learning your interests, learning what is going to entice you to maybe not take that half a second pause to fully analyze who you're getting that email from, or hovering over the URL and the email address to ensure that you are in fact getting redirected to where you are purporting to be getting redirected from. So I think everything that Lily just said, that if you're a high net worth individual, that there is an even more importance to take those extra steps. But I mean, I think kind of the notion of, oh, we're all doomed. It's these actors are spending a lot of time creating personalized social engineering and phishing attempts. So I think just taking, whenever you get something that is not from somebody that you know, or that seems a little out of the blue, just taking a pause to fully analyze that information.
And I think Lily made a really good point earlier that when you're custodying your own crypto, which is a great measure, a lot of the onus of security then falls on the individual user. And I think that that's an area where the industry is still kind of developing in education of users, because the barrier to entry is still pretty large. It's a pretty technical thing to do to custody your own funds. So again, I hope that this is an area where the industry sort of continues to make improvements in education, sort of accessibility and things like that. And I think we'll see a lot of that moving forward.
Sorry to interrupt you folks, but I have to let you know about the Coin Bureau deals page. Now, my team and I have been able to pull together some of the best promos and discounts in the crypto space. We're talking trading fee discounts of over 50%, thousands of dollars in bonus airdrops, amazing deals at top exchanges, reduced prices on hardware wallets, and much, much more besides. So just go to coinbureau.com/deals, also linked to below, and find the promo suited to you. Enjoy the rest of the video.
So how does the investigation process look like then? For example, with Mixin, $200 million hack, that's a significant amount, surely. Does that just automatically trigger your special agents so you start to look into it? Or what's the process looking like?
So the answer is it depends. I know when I was at the FBI, there needs to, at least for a U.S. agency, there typically needs to be a U.S. nexus that then would go into what office is going to be leading the charge. But I think whether it's FBI, HSI, IRS criminal investigations, I think at this point, every one of those U.S. investigative agencies have very robust and well-informed crypto investigation departments, and we all understand that time is of the essence. And so that's when we all kind of throw off kind of take on the mantra of, one team, one fight, that you sort out the administrative piece of who's taking the lead later. But yes, usually something like that, if there is a clear U.S. nexus, people will start to look at the flow of funds immediately.
Yeah, and to add to that with the jurisdiction and the U.S. nexus, the nexus can also be gained not just based on, okay, where is this exchange that was hacked? For example, if it was an exchange that was hacked, where is it incorporated or where is it located? It's a lot of it has to do with where the victims are located. So if we have a lot of victim reports that that have losses that resulted from the hack, that would give us jurisdiction. So if there's a victim in New York, there's a victim in Miami, both Miami and New York would have a jurisdiction to investigate the hack, even if the exchange is somewhere in another country.
Or if they're using U.S. infrastructure too.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's all these large exchanges, they have infrastructure and servers all over the world. So that's another way that if there are U.S. victims and you need a stronger case for jurisdiction, sometimes we'll also look at where their servers physically located.
Yep.
And how does the collaboration with companies like Chainalysis look like? What's their function in your investigations?
So when I was at the FBI, we used a number of different tools. So we have a very strong relationship with Chainalysis. We also use TRM and CipherTrace. So we had a number of investigators that were trained and certified on all these different tools. There are also experts at each of these companies too that say if we had a more complicated money laundering topology or privacy coins were used, we would collaborate with those companies. There are also whether it be Chainalysis or TRM or other blockchain intelligence companies, there's also a number of former, whether it be FBI, HSI, IRSCI, or FinCEN or other elements of Department of Treasury. There's a number of ex-government investigators at those firms too, who know how things work from the government side of the house, that have also been phenomenal collaboration partners.
Yeah.
Lily, I don't know, does that more or less reflect your experience at HSI?
Yeah. So I was actually at DEA, but yes.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. Yeah. So absolutely, and I've been doing crypto cases since a decade ago, and I beta tested a lot of the early tools that came out, and probably tested most of them, or at least seen a demo of the majority of the ones that are on the market right now. And what I love about capitalism and competition is that they compete against each other, a lot of the tools that are coming out, so it's not really a monopoly right now. Back then, there was only a couple of players. Now there's a lot of different players that specialize in different things. For example, smart contract visualization, or NFT tracing, or cross bridge tracing, or even demixing, risk scoring, things like that. So there's a lot of different capabilities that are coming out from the last kind of decade of these companies coming out and doing and seeing what's needed in the market with law enforcement as well as compliance, of course, and the private sector to help private sector entities like financial institutions to do proper risk scoring and comply with their anti-money laundering regulations. So definitely work very, very closely with a lot of the software tools, and they've been very, very useful, especially in garnering intelligence that we can then use to further a case and get additional information and parallel reconstruct some of the information that we find using blockchain analytics.
Valerie, go ahead.
Yeah, and just to add to that on the Chainalysis side, so I love the sort of question of establishing jurisdiction and establishing priorities. So from the investigations team perspective, we have a section of our team that's sort of dedicated to U.S. government support, and then a section that works primarily with private sector called Crypto Incidents Response, which is actually the team that Julia sits on and supports our private sector customers in the unfortunate event they've been hacked. We also have an international investigations team that supports sort of global public sector customers. So at Chainalysis, when there has been an incident, oftentimes one or several of our customers have an interest in that. So we're basically evaluating every single hack for a customer. And so I think we sit in an interesting position in the industry because we kind of get to support from both sides. And again, because cryptocurrency is decentralized, it makes things really exciting. The crypto incidents response team is located all over the world. So it's nice to have that real-time sort of support and monitoring fund movements, but it really is a major team effort. And working with law enforcement partners is one of the best things that we get to do. And the expertise that they bring is really exciting. So definitely an interesting, exciting form of collaboration.
How do you decide whether one of the attacks was nation-state sponsored or grassroots?
So I think I'm gonna start with DPRK in North Korea at this point. So a lot of the clustering techniques that are used by the tools to group addresses together, we sometimes it'll be based off of the tactics, techniques, and procedures that are used. So, say if a wallet address is it's indirect, either sending or receiving exposure to a known Lazarus Group address, and the tactics, techniques, and procedures are very similar. Then that will start to amplify our inkling that it was nation state. Same thing. I mean, but whether it be Russia, China, Iran, I think when you first see something, it's what do the facts of the situation in totality tell you, whether it be the tactics, techniques, and procedures used to infiltrate the computer systems, or the social engineering techniques that are used, or the industry that is targeted and the level of sophistication. But there really is it's usually a judgment call. Like there are circumstances where you're going to have a smoking gun saying that it's nation state. But you at the beginning of the investigation, you evaluate the facts that you have. You also use your training and experience based investigating nation state acts, and then you keep doing your investigation. At some point, a judgment call is made saying that, all right, we're going to attribute this to an intelligence agency, or a government actor, or even there is that hybrid space that it's criminal entities that are believed to be operating under the influence of a nation state group like the Lazarus Group. So I know I've been saying it depends over and over again, but that's usually what these investigations are. You start with your facts, you build out your case, and then at some point you say, yeah, based on the facts at hand and my training and experience, we, the U.S. government, we believe this to be nation state attributed.
Yeah, and there's a lot of on-chain fingerprint that we can use, building off of Meredith's point, to help to attribute something like a DPRK exploit or a North Korea exploit. That can be how quickly they move the funds, how automated they move the funds, what mixers do they use, what bridges do they use, even what kind of off-chain indicators that you can get from on-chain, such as IP addresses, or being involved. So that can really quickly give us a lot of context into what kind of actor we're looking at. The other thing that we've seen a lot more recently has been the commingling of funds between different North Korea hacks. That's something where, if you've seen that the FBI has been attributing some of these hacks very quickly after they occur, then a lot of that is coming from seeing that fingerprint on chain, in addition to the attack vector, and looking at that commingling.
Can you give some specific examples of the motivations behind these attacks, I understand some of them are financially motivated, nation state sponsored, while some are to fish for information. In terms of, can you divide that? Like for Russian hackers, what are they usually after, and for North Koreans, for example?
So for North Koreans, we're typically seeing financially motivated hacks. I think it's well known at this point that North Korea steals crypto via either steals crypto via hacks or other nefarious activities and uses it to fund the nuclear weapons program. I think when we're turning to a Russia or China, you're going to see it more so be information based, but so there is, like, they're not going to be stealing crypto information from the U.S. government. However, they still need to have servers to take to use as their C2 for either the malware or where they're going to first land the information that they've stolen. And more times than not, they still purchase those servers with cryptocurrency. So even though the nature of the crime isn't necessarily directly crypto related, like it is with DPRK, however, there are huge on-chain components to the investigation when you're going to look at the financial footprint of who is paying for these servers that are involved in these attacks.
We have an audience question. Before that, let me hand the mic over to Guy. Guy, welcome.
Thank you, Dumpling. I just have a general question. We're talking about North Korea and the Lazarus Group. Given how successful Lazarus has been in so many crypto heists over the past few years, and given that, as I think it was you, Meredith, said, this money is being, by and large, channeled back into the country's nuclear weapons program. So my question, and this is to any one of you who want to take this up, is North Korea and the Lazarus Group, given everything that's at stake, are they perhaps the biggest threats to crypto out there? Is that fair to say, or am I being a bit overblown?
I think at least over on the U.S. side, if you look at, so there's been a couple of pieces of legislation that have been proposed. The first one that I'm going to call out is the CANSI Act. That was, I think Romney was it was a bipartisan bill, but if you look at any of the press releases, North Korea comes up all the time. So what that bill is, they're trying to, and I know it's very controversial within the crypto industry, but they're trying to bring DeFi protocols to have the same KYC and AML standards as banks. How you can actually implement that with a decentralized smart contract is a totally different can of worms. But if you look at the press releases, they are all citing DPRK's use of DeFi. So as far as purely a crypto threat, I think when you're looking at the enforcement actions and proposed legislation in the U.S. side, I think the fact that North Korea is coming up over and over again shows just how big of a threat it is.
Yeah, and also to add to that, I think because crypto has made it a lot easier to monetize hacks, scams, and fraud, with the ability to transfer value across borders and it being immutable, and you can't take the transaction back, and there's no banking system that kind of monitors and regulates that specific transaction. That's why it's kind of become the prime target for North Korean hacks, because they do finance their operations this way, and it's a lot easier for them to hack into a crypto bridge that has bad security than to hack into a big bank, which of course hacking into a big bank has happened too, but it's a lot harder nowadays to do than to hack into a crypto bridge that may have several developers that are sitting in their basement, probably don't have a big security team. And a lot of times it's an open source kind of development project. So like if you look at the Ronin network, for example, the Ronin bridge that was hacked, that was a massive amount of money, over $600 million that was hacked by North Koreans. And it was a governance attack, right? So like it was essentially the hackers were able to gain access to several of the validator nodes' private keys. And that goes back again to proper security in keeping private keys safe. And again, going back to CCSS, many of these exploits wouldn't happen if, let's say, these validator nodes had proper key management systems in place.
I just wanted to add that while North Korea is definitely a really big actor in the hacks that we see, there are many other suspected repeat attackers who are maybe just not getting as much media attention, especially if you look at some of the more like code exploit based attacks. So while we're always monitoring North Korea, we're also just aware and monitoring for what other trends we're seeing, and just trying to make sure that we're keeping up with what's the latest in the space.
Can I ask then? I don't know if you're able to answer this, any of you. But as far as you're aware, is North Korea the only state-sponsored hacking collective that you're aware of, or are other states sort of doing similar things? I'm kind of picking up on your point, Julia, about as you say that there are sort of entities that don't get perhaps as much publicity as North Korea. So, do you think there could be other state actors involved in this sort of hacking?
I don't know if we can really go into specifics, but just that there is some like early evidence, and we're just continuing to evaluate that.
Say no more. Say no more. Yeah, I can imagine that's probably a fairly sensitive topic, but you don't ask, you don't get. Dumpling, did you want to take us on to our next question? Did you say we had an audience question?
Yes, we have a few, but Tecmo, he is blockchain investigator according to the bio, so I'm curious to hear what kind of questions he has. Remember, guys, no shilling, no self-promotion, stay relevant. Tecmo, welcome. What's your question?
Yeah, thanks, Guy and Dumpling. I actually used to work with Meredith on the same squad, so hey, Meredith. I'm
Hey, that's a voice I recognize.
I'm now a crypto investigator over at a crypto exchange that rhymes with finance that you guys may have heard of. So my question to everyone on the panel is, right now, like, Binance does a ton of crypto investigations on our end. Anytime these hacks happen, we do it. Chainalysis does it. Every company in this industry does it, but everything is very siloed. I have a private Slack group with TRM, a Telegram group with Chainalysis, a Telegram group with that company, and this group, and it's all siloed. And I feel like that hurts our speed. What are your guys' thoughts on how we collaborate better, so that when a big hack happens, we're all able to say, hey, your company is really good at this. You guys take that part, and Binance will see the funds coming into our platform, and we'll act on that. And how do you guys see the collaboration improving over time?
I can start. We've made a lot of effort to try to have more collaboration, whether that be with just like Twitter sleuths that are out there, or with different exchanges, stablecoin providers, just whoever's in the space that might have the ability to have some positive action to try to actually get ahead of some of these fund movements. But but I agree with you that there is a lot of room for improvement there. I know that in the past there have been some like larger collaborations that have maybe fallen through, and maybe size has something to do with it, that you have to find that sweet spot. So definitely open to other suggestions.
Yeah, and to add to that also, there's a public-private partnership called NCFTA, and it's an alliance between businesses and law enforcement, and they work together to disrupt cybercrime. So that task force was created for that specific purpose, so that there's more of a flow of information between private sector and law enforcement. So I think that's very useful. The only thing that I have seen the biggest gap in is when it comes to the smaller amount exploits, or the smaller sizes of loss. When it's to $100 million, then yeah, all the federal agencies are going to be on top of it. But when it comes to a smaller time victim, let's say they got scammed out of $200,000, for example, many federal agencies won't even take that case because it's the amount is too small, and it doesn't meet their threshold. So the issue here is actually local law enforcement is specifically in the U.S. Making sure that local law enforcement is able to address a lot of these hack scams and fraud that are with smaller amounts, where victims right now many times feel desperate and feel like they have nowhere to go because the feds won't listen to them, won't take their case, or local law enforcement just don't have the resources and don't know how to even proceed. And the first 48 hours are crucial when it comes to incident response. So that I see as a very, very big gap in our industry, where I think we're failing both from law enforcement and private sector perspective.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Lily. And I think where that I've seen that be the most devastating is particularly in romance scams. I've definitely had a few cases where it's been extremely hard to establish jurisdiction, but you really want to be able to find a law enforcement agency who is willing to take that on, because the scale and devastation of those cases is so impactful. I will say, just from my background, I actually come from a US-based cryptocurrency exchange. So I, just on a positive spin of things, I have seen the relationship between exchanges, companies like Chainalysis, and law enforcement significantly better with time. So, at the exchange where I was, I think we did a great job submitting sort of suspicious activity reports and collaborating with law enforcement. But now we've seen cases where crypto exchanges and other private sector partners are actually sort of conducting full-scale investigations on their own, and then bringing those proactively to law enforcement, sort of private sector partners like ourselves. And that's been really positive to see, the breadth of the knowledge and in-house expertise grow. And like Lily mentioned, when these hacks occur, for example, you have such a small span of time to action those cases. So when you have extremely competent compliance teams who are sort of looking at that proactively and able to respond quickly, often in several time zones, we just get better case outcomes. So that's on the positive side, a good trend that I'm seeing that's sort of more recent as of the last 3 years or so.
Yeah, I mean, thank God for Aaron West, because I know pig butchering is such a huge issue right now, and I know with local law enforcement, you're completely right that it's when I was at the FBI, it is such a crappy feeling to when you get something come in and it's a victim and they're completely devastated, and you just know in the back of your mind, like, the attorney's office is never going to take this with how small of a dollar amount is, even though it's crazy because $200,000 is still that's still a huge amount of money. Imagine if you lost that tomorrow. And with the local law enforcement, I think there's a lot of work we need to do as far as training resources go, but there is also this delicate dance of with the local law enforcement, it's hard for them sometimes to take on those cases because, with the beauty of a federal agency is that it's multi-jurisdictional, is that if money goes from Maryland to Virginia and then overseas, that Maryland to Virginia line doesn't matter for us versus for local law enforcement, they do have a big jurisdictional issue too. So it's an extraordinarily complicated problem, and education.
Yeah,
we got to do better.
Yeah, and I think in these
100%.
in these cases where, like you mentioned, where there's maybe a jurisdictional issue and a challenge for local law enforcement, I think task forces are really useful for that. There's many task forces around the country that include both federal and local law enforcement agencies, and I think that's probably the best way to handle that. Where if usually you'll have jurisdiction if the victim is in your area, which usually would be the case if the victim came to you as a local law enforcement agency. It's just a matter of where the money ends up and whether you can further the investigation by following the money if the money ends up outside of your jurisdiction. So I think these partnerships with federal agencies help a lot, and these task forces as well help a lot.
Tecmo, you have a follow-up question.
Yeah, I was more of 2 quick points, but Lily talked about the NCFTA. I know we're not supposed to shill anything, but I'm Binance's representative to NCFTA, so definitely if any other organizations want to join that, we just sort of kicked off the first crypto collaboration group. I think Chain and TRM are already a part of that. So if any other companies that want to get involved in that would be fantastic because we're building that out right now. But to the other point being made about local law enforcement, literally every single day of my life is spent on romance scams and pig butchering and working with local law enforcement. I mainly deal in the Americas and mostly in the US, but we have teams worldwide dealing with this issue. And the good news is that local law enforcement is actually a lot better than they used to be. Generally, the way it is now is you have 2 or 3 people in each state, it seems, that are the crypto guy that every law enforcement local call. And then they have relationships with, say, Secret Service, IRS, or FBI. And usually one of them is a task force officer or something so that they can get that global jurisdiction matter dealt with. But the good news I just wanted to say is that literally every single day I'm either personally training local law enforcement or working with them and teaching them and helping them with their tracing. So we're making progress.
I have a question for you, Tecmo. What are the most common security threats faced by big exchanges like Binance, and what is Binance doing proactively to address and mitigate these threats?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't work on that side of things, so I wouldn't really feel comfortable answering that. I do U.S. law enforcement liaison, so I apologize, but I'm not on that side of things.
Right. Thank you, Tecmo, for coming up, and really nice questions. We have Philip next, and then Lexi. Philip, what do you have for us?
Hi guys, pleasure to be on here. And speaking of the pig butchering stuff and romance scams, this is actually how I got into crypto. So it's this huge and really funny, amusing topic to me of how I discovered Bitcoin back in 2018. And then went on to, really get into the bee's knees. When we're going back to hacks and scams, there was mentions of Mt. Gox. And what I wanted to mention again was Silkroad and James Long. And he's like some huge inspirational figure to me in this space of his story was so long. And I've been trying to track his story as to where he's been sentenced for 1 year because I'd really love to meet him. Is there any inside knowledge where I can kind of access to possibly meet James? I know it's a really odd question, but it's someone that's ran on a similar pathway in his life to me of his own internal sort of background that really does fascinate me. I feel like there's a good connection.
I'm not sure if this is like a controversial question because there's a long pause. Is this a very strange question? Because I don't understand the full context. Meredith and Lily.
So how could, I mean, he was sentenced for 1 year, but I mean, I'd really love to meet James, and I'd even want to write him letters. He's been convicted for hacking for 50,000 bitcoins, the duplication bug in Silkroad, where he could like kind of access the funds in Silkroad and take funds out of the system. And I mean, that's like part of the discussion why I raised my hand, because I'd like, is there a way to meet someone that has done it? And James was a figure that was hugely inspirational for me, and I kind of figure if anyone in the audience knows how I can meet James, and I've been trying to track him down and figure out where he is, but I can't.
Sounds like no one really has a quick answer for you, unfortunately, Philip. Not in the space, maybe. Julia, did you want to add something?
Not really on how to meet him. I was just going to say that James's case is, or how he was eventually identified, as a very interesting path, and I would just recommend that anyone who isn't familiar to look at either some Twitter threads or blog posts that are about how the IRS ultimately was able to track down James.
Right. Thank you, Julia, and thank you, Philip, for coming up. Lexi, what question?
Thank you so much for having me on.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. I'm really enjoy this conversation about all talking about social engineering, except for like education, and put like your two factor in the hard device. So briefly, like introduction of myself. I used to work for a blockchain analytics company called CoinFirm. So I have some experience with like forensic, with like we doing like a lot of transaction protections for the client. And I was about to ask the question, Lily just spot on, because I'm not really, how can I say, familiar with American market, for the reason like a Chainalysis TRM is dominate the market as whole. So I more understand like EMEA or APAC. So for the forensic part, right? So we have compliance team find a scam and hack and submit like SAR report, and then the whole cycle literally take really long, and a lot of like exchanges or lots of entities, they really can't afford it, whatever the process will take. But don't get me wrong, like we do work with like Kroll, like doing the consultant to go into the court cases and use our evidence to explain how the funds smurfing or layering in like Mixin and Tumblr. And also we work with like asset reality to seize the fund after like the law enforcement have already located that. This is really brilliant. But do you think, as a panelist, for the small startup, is that a better way if we can prevent this hacking or scam happen at the first place, or have a type of insurance technology to provide this type of company will be benefit for more of the market players? Thanks.
Lexi, are you I'm sorry, are you speaking on behalf of an exchange?
I'm just speaking on behalf of like a crypto passionate. Like I want the massive adoption happen to the whole market.
Okay, so the question is there a way to prevent it from whose point of view? You said from a point of view of a startup. What kind of startup are you referring to?
Well, maybe let me rephrase my question. So for like a crypto exchange, or for like VC firm, or for like the people want to invest like asset management firm, and they have fund, right? Their wallet custody, like whatever their AUM is, could be like not 1 billion, like that's massive, maybe only 10 mil, maybe 2 mil, very small. And if they got hacked, they maybe can't afford the process to go into the law enforcement as in the private sector. And it's not entry point for the level of the nation going to help them. So is there any way, like an insurance product or a technology can prevent them to help them to get hacked, like an insurance technology? Do you aware of?
So my best advice would be CCSS still. CCSS certification is, so CCSS cryptocurrency security standard is a security standard that is focused exclusively on cryptocurrency security. And it covers a lot of the vulnerabilities that and attack vectors in cryptocurrency security for many types of companies, whether it be an asset manager, hedge fund, custodian, protocol, even just an individual like Mark Cuban, for example, custodying their own assets. So there are different levels of certification that you can get, and different levels of knowledge that you can acquire about how to actually proactively protect assets from being stolen. So that's the first step, is to standardize cybersecurity across the board. And the second step, I think insurance companies, of course, there are some insurance companies that will underwrite companies that would mitigate some of these threats. Like, if, for example, if you get hacked, sometimes you'll get some of your money back. But the caveat to that is because there's no security standard that has really been widely adopted, which is why I'm harping on CCSS. We need to adopt the security standard so it's standardized and that it signals to the industry, it signals to insurance companies, to investors that you have your security figured out. Because it's not widely adopted right now, insurance companies can take, or underwriters can take, up to 6 months to underwrite a policy for a crypto company, because they have to go from the very beginning. You have to go deeply into the architecture, the infrastructure, the blockchain technology, all the different components of whatever company that they're trying to underwrite. While if there was a standard that they could say, okay, check mark, they have CCSS, for example, we don't have to do everything from scratch. They already have a certain level of protection or basic protection that we can use to mitigate risk. And same thing with investors that invest into crypto companies.
Yeah, agree with Lily. So the first step is just having appropriate security measures in place. I know not promotion, but promotion. There is, Chainalysis does have crypto incidents response. I'm sure we're not the only ones in the industry that do things like this, but it is sort of like a retainer for our private sector partners. If they get hacked, they have real-time, immediate, sort of around-the-clock support to trace down those funds. Now, again, the first and most important step of this is, ideally, before a customer or a prospect even gets hacked, is it starts with the genesis. It starts with having appropriate measures in place and sort of thinking ahead to prevent that from even happening. But yeah, fully agree with you, Lily.
So thank you so much for the answer. So, okay, promotion, but not promotion. So now I move to a company called CoinCover. So we basically, like exactly Lily said, we underrating the risk of your loss, but we have to do a really deep due diligence on the wallet, on how you send your transaction out of the wallet, on your tap, on have you done your pen test or not. But we have our own like underwritten risk and machine. It's not Chainalysis. We are not like competitor with you, but we help more people can be easy get access to insurance back, if that makes sense. And we also do key backup, like the third party trust.
Lexi, sorry, I have to interrupt you here. We need to stay relevant, and if we want to talk about coin cover, we can do a different space. We're very draconian about not sounding shilly or promotional of any company. So sorry to interrupt you, but if you have a follow-up question, please ask. If not, we'll move on to the next speaker. Lexi, do you have a follow-up question?
Oh, no. I just like wondering if there's something I don't know they know. And I was just like wondering what is in the American market. I don't know. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for your question. Guy, what do you say we move to the next audience question?
Sounds good, Dumpling. Yep, let's go ahead.
Right. Crypto Degen / Crypto News ETH. What question do you have for the panel?
Very kind of you guys to have me up here. Yeah, my question is this. Earlier, we spoke. It was mentioned about education, and that education needs to be improved. One thing the blockchain community does well is spread of education. But how could we utilize this the most? Is there anything particular that the panel thinks we could hone in on, so that we can start correcting things and spreading this education that needs to be done?
Yeah,
I'll start. Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm gonna continue beating the dead horse about CCSS. By the way, I'm not getting any monetary gain from so this is not a promotion that if you guys adopt CCSS, I'm gonna get anything out of it. Not at all. But I'm very passionate about the subject because I know that we can do a lot of preventative work in order to get the industry in the right place. So we actually launched a course with C4, which is Cryptocurrency Certifications Consortium. And it's a co-sponsored course with Cat Labs, my company. And we teach you how to do, we teach you level 1 CCSS. So basically everything you need to know about getting certified in CCSS level 1. So that's the first kind of educational course that we launched. And I think it's very, very good for an introductory course. It's good for anybody from you custodying your own assets to asset manager, custodian, even infrastructure provider or wallet service. So that's kind of where we put action to our words. A lot of times we're screaming and yelling, saying we need more education, but then we don't do anything about it. So we tried to do something about it by at least creating a course that people can take and learn more about how to secure assets.
Yeah, and I'll follow on to that too. I think that's a great point. The other piece of that is like going back to the original sort of scam pig butchering discussion is education about sort of the popular industry trends and scams. And I think that that's where partnership with private sector, partnership with law enforcement about what we're seeing, local law enforcement as well, is really important, whether that be targeting older generations, folks who might be a little bit less literate, all the way up to extremely technical folks who are just getting targeted by a really technical threat actor. So the advisories that I think we're seeing being put out increasingly, just having that industry communication is super important, and hopefully will prevent more incidents from happening in the future.
Yeah, I'd love to even see some more happening along the lines of what MoonPay is doing. I don't know if anyone is familiar, but if you are moving funds from fiat to crypto through MoonPay, there's a screen that pops up that says, wait a second here, did someone tell you to do this? And you don't know why. And it's to just bring that very introductory person in to say, oh, I might be getting scammed and I didn't even know it. Who doesn't know even that these pig butchering kind of scams are so in the forefront. And I think that there's a lot of other first touch points that are becoming more and more aware that they can bring that education and that even small just awareness to the forefront for their users.
Yeah, I think to piggyback off of that, a lot of these pig butchering scams, and I've even seen it where it didn't even necessarily start out as a romance scam. But when they have you, when they present you your fake UI of your alleged either crypto trading platform or your investment platform, I think also just having some educational awareness on how to conduct your own due diligence on this. I think that if you are familiar with the crypto industry, you know what news resources to use, or how to do some of your own basic investigation on a new crypto investment platform. But I think a number of the people that are targeted in these pig butchering scams do not. So I think sometimes when they're faced with a UI and they're seeing like, oh, numbers going up and there's a fancy graph and all that, to them it looks legitimate. But I think knowing how to have some more critical eyes on evaluating, like, oh, there's a pretty graphical interface that I'm looking at, but how long have these guys been around for? If they is there, even just knowing that, a website like Chain Abuse or something like that is a resource that they have. So I think that's another component of combating the pig butchering problem.
I think that's a really good point. And what I love that you raised too is like folks who are in the industry know, which sites to look at, like where, to look on Twitter and things like that to see the recent scams, but also like reaching folks who might not know where to look and are just getting targeted on a messaging platform, for example. It'd be great to see like some unique or creative partnerships with those types of platforms as well, sending out some kind of warnings or advisories and things like that. Just outreach that is more that is like less technical, less sort of knee deep in the industry, and reaching the regular person who might be getting targeted would be an amazing next step too.
Techmo, go ahead.
Yeah, I hope it's okay just because pig butchering is kind of my life.
Can you give us a definition what pig butchering is? I assume many people don't know what that is.
Sure. I mean, it's actually a kind of like a poorly nomenclatured way of just saying like a romance scam. I helped author a recent blog post from Binance about it. That maybe I'll pin it to the nest or something in the spaces. But it goes into what it is and what to look out for, and the kind of the gist of it is that you'll get, I don't know if you've ever gotten a text message from random number and it says, "Hey, Julia, are we still meeting up later?" Something completely random. I get them all the time because I think scammers are mad at me. But they'll start it with some, way of just getting in their foot in the door. And then, if you're just an unsuspecting person, you'll respond. All of a sudden they start building a relationship. It can turn into a romantic relationship. It doesn't have to. It can just be a friendly relationship. But all they're trying to do is just build up some opening of a conversation, start social engineering you. Maybe they've done reconnaissance, as Meredith alluded to before, depending on, your status and your wealth. But really, they're targeting everyone, and it's a billion-dollar industry. It's billions of billions, and the kind of seedy underbelly of a lot of this, the pig butchering thing, is that it's not always the person scamming you is not always like this really evil person. A lot of times it's been someone who was targeted themselves by a job announcement in Southeast Asia, and they go to that country, and now they are human trafficked and they're slave labor conducting these scams. And Binance actually worked with the Thai police to take down a large operation recently. And so there's a lot going on with pig butchering, but it's just a massive, massive scam going on. Like I said, I'll try to post that blog up in the nest of the spaces. But the thing that I always hammer home to people is talk to your parents, talk to the elderly, talk to everyone, and just let them know that this exists, because it wouldn't be $3 billion lost last year if it wasn't working so well. The fact that, and it could be elder fraud, it doesn't matter. It's investment fraud, it's tech support fraud, and it's pig butchering. Like they're all essentially the same. It's just different vectors of getting to your money. And what I see every single day, or especially elderly people, getting contacted saying, oh, hey, your bank account is compromised because there's a bad guy in the bank. What I need you to do is take everything out and put it in a Bitcoin ATM. From that Bitcoin ATM, the funds are then stolen. Fortunately, sometimes we're able to shut that down on the exchange end of things and hopefully provide restitution to some of those victims. But that's where, educating law enforcement comes in. A lot of law enforcement currently is still completely brand new to it, and they don't even know. They'll be like, oh, I don't know what that is. I'm not even going to touch that. But luckily that's getting better. But just in general, it's very, very important for everyone to talk to their friends, talk to their family members, especially older people, and just say, hey, you need to be aware of this. It's a massively growing industry.
Yeah, I want to add to what Techmo just said, because I believe pig butchering is a direct translation from the Chinese one. Literally means the scheme to kill the pigs. So what it is that Southeastern Asia, especially country like Cambodia and Burma, I believe, there are a lot of camps that are just built. They're like mini cities. They're built to house these scammers. And many of these scammers are either abducted or tricked. Actually, they're victims themselves. It happened quite a bit recently, like in the border between China and some Southeastern Asian countries. They would be hiring a lot of people by using high salaries, great job offers. So people get hired by these legitimate looking companies, and they go on a company trip to like Yunnan, south of China. And then they got around, leaving the border to a new country and get transported into those camps. They have skyscrapers, a lot of buildings. It's like a mini city, but all of those victims, what they are forced to do is they work at least 16 hours on the computer, just typing and doing romance scams. If they don't hit a certain target, they're going to get beaten and tortured. There's a lot of graphic videos on the internet. But what I'm trying to say is those scammers, they're victims themselves, but not all of them are actually really, really stupid. They think they did their due diligence. They think it's a legitimate company that they are interviewing for. So these scams are actually evolving, and scammers are getting smarter, especially with AI and face swapping. We're seeing different kinds of scams across either in crypto or outside of crypto. So definitely would mean a lot if we become more educated about these kind of things. Crypto Degen, did that answer your question?
It absolutely did. Yeah, there's a lot of things to take away from there. If there are any exchanges listening, adding in those notifications there on first-time purchases and transfers, that would go a great deal by the sounds of it to help stop the spread of these attacks. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I agree. It's good to see exchanges like Binance taking initiative in helping identifying these kind of scams. Guy, what do you say we take maybe one or two last questions from the audience?
Yeah, I think one more audience question, and then we'll hear a bit more from our panelists before we finish up.
Right. I see A-Son. He has his hand up. A-Son, please come to the stage. What is your question?
Hey guys, thanks for bringing me up. And my question was around the topics that are being discussed right now, education and the evolution of scams. I mean, the question is, if you start educating people, won't the scams just evolve and become more elaborate? Like right now, outside of crypto, you started off with the Nigerian prince, right? And then you started becoming, your bank account is hacked, and now you even see text messages like your CVS account or your Amazon account or like Apple, not even like prominent industries, just like certain products people use. In crypto, I distinctly remember one email I got that was very well crafted. It was just a few months ago, a Uniswap V3 that was, I think, leaked by Ledger from that email hack. But a lot of scams you see today, they're easily identifiable with, like, for example, spelling errors or weird email addresses. But if we educate people more and more, wouldn't the scams become more and more elaborate to get around what's being educated? Just want to get your thoughts on that. That's meant for everyone on the up here, not just the host.
I mean, yes, but that's, tale as old as time. It's always been, the law enforcement evolves to combat the scams, and the scammers evolve so they don't get caught. However, I don't think that necessarily changes the need to educate people. I mean, yes, they will, but that's our job as, when I was formerly in law enforcement and now being on private sector. And that's why the private sector, public sector partnerships are so important, is that is, that's the job, is to continue to educate people and stay up on trends when the bad guys do evolve, and then re-educate the public on continuing trends, on evolving trends.
I'm not an expert in this. Try to answer this question with a very short sentence, Asan. Like, what's the alternative?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. I mean, we have to start somewhere, but it's just something to keep in mind, because scammers will always scam if that's the intention, whether they're victims or not. On YouTube, if you go, there's some popular YouTubers that try to scam the scammers, essentially call the call centers and stuff like that. But if you notice, their methods change every few weeks, every few months, and it's kind of scary, because in crypto there is no middleman. It's just like sometimes directly peer-to-peer, kind of what was intended. So yeah, I just had a question about that, and I appreciate you answering.
I think to speak for myself, I think perhaps what the most important thing that people can develop, to try and keep ahead of the scammers, is a sense of awareness and cynicism. I think, because however much law enforcement and companies like Chainalysis and what have you are able to keep up with the scammers and keep ahead of them, or at least abreast of them, nothing is really going to change unless more and more people become aware that, hang on a sec, this person asking for money on the internet, this doesn't seem right. Do you know what I mean? So I believe that we have to kind of, as consumers, as individuals, we have to sort of try and take matters into our own hands in that regard, and educate ourselves. But obviously, law enforcement play a very important role in that. But I think we have to take the initiative on that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, victims of especially pig butchering scams, they don't expect to be pig butchered. Right, so it's many times it's not very reasonable for them to take proactive measures to prevent themselves from being scammed, like is the case in the romance scam, because many times these people have never even touched crypto. The romance scammer will establish a relationship and pretend to be in love with the victim, and then will start getting them into crypto, getting them to set up a Coinbase account, getting them to set up a wallet, and all this other stuff. So it's really hard to proactively teach someone like that. So I think also media has a lot to do with it. So how do people watch? Like, let's say if it's an older person, what kind of media does that person consume? Is it television? Is it Netflix? So I think even raising awareness via social media or any other medium that the individual is consuming on a daily basis, I think would probably be one of the best ways to do to prevent this from happening to these types of people that generally don't even deal with crypto, and they wouldn't even think about getting educated about crypto. So just raising awareness that these things exist, and if somebody reaches out to you on Instagram and pretends like it's a mistake, and then starts a conversation with you, and then starts a relationship with you, then that should be a red flag, right? So and just, documentaries, things like that, whatever, these kinds of victims, whatever mediums of information that they consume on a daily basis is where we should target, I think.
Absolutely. I'd like to. I'm aware that we've been going for a while, but I just wanted to move the discussion on a little bit to a couple of the things that were also mentioned in the title of this space, and that's privacy coins and mixers. So I'd love to just get the opinion of some of the speakers. Obviously, privacy coins and mixers are some of the most advanced technology out there for preserving privacy in crypto, obviously. Can any of you speak to how you or your who you work for are keeping ahead of those developments in that space? How do you manage to maintain your effectiveness in tracking transactions when you're dealing with technology like mixers and privacy coins, etc.?
I mean, I will just this privacy coins are sort of an interesting one. I think that they're important and interesting to the industry, but at the same time, something that I like to remind people is that there are of course regulatory concerns and things like that, but the vast majority of criminal activity still uses other types of cryptocurrency. So while privacy coins might be appealing to criminals, that's not necessarily where we are seeing the majority of criminal activity take place. And what is interesting about privacy coins is it's difficult to develop total privacy. So of course they, like every other cryptocurrency, operate on an immutable ledger. So that means that any criminal transactions will basically exist forever. So privacy coins, like any other type of crypto, it's difficult to maintain that total anonymity, but it's certainly an interesting one that we at Chainalysis try to stay current and ahead of. Yeah.
I think a really important point that you just made is that a lot of the crime is not happening on privacy coins. In my experience, I would see privacy coins being used as an obfuscation technique. So as far as looking at what is the source of funds or destination of funds, is that seeing whether it be Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Tether or a stable coin being swapped to a privacy coin and then swapped back. But this crime, a lot of it's financially motivated crime, and there's very few, if any, services that'll let you go from on ramp or off ramp straight to Monero. So it's one piece of the puzzle. It certainly, as an investigator, does make things more complicated. But there's still a lot of investigative power you can harness outside of that one transaction that used Monero. And then even with ransomware, if they're trying to steal money, or pick butchering, like if they're trying to steal money from victims, taking somebody that is not a cryptocurrency savvy actor and then sending them straight to a Monero or something super technically complicated like Zcash, that's probably not going to go well. There is an element of the actor needs to make it as easy as possible for the victim to on-ramp from US dollars to cryptocurrency. So that's why we're still seeing a lot of Bitcoin and a lot of stable coins, not necessarily privacy coins being used.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think you hit the nail on the head with kind of the technical barrier to entry to the ease of use of a lot of these privacy coins. And I've seen this since the very beginning of being a dark web and crypto investigator, that Monero even didn't take hold up until very recently, where now on the dark web it is used quite often. And like you said, it's used a lot as during the middle of the flow of funds, during the obfuscation, not necessarily cashing out from Monero to cash, because like you said, a lot of the exchanges won't even carry Monero or support Monero for that reason, because it's very difficult to do any kind of AML on Monero transactions. So another reason why Monero, I think, didn't really take hold. When I say traditional, I mean non-cyber criminals like drug cartels or terrorist organizations, is a lack of liquidity. So because of, and it's kind of like a cause and effect, technical barrier to entry, and also not a lot of fiat off ramps for Monero. The liquidity is kind of low on a lot of these privacy coins. So if you're moving a lot of money, if you're moving billions of dollars or millions of dollars in illicit funding, Monero would not be the best way to move it, or especially not be the best way for an on-ramp to fiat or off-ramp to fiat. So that's with privacy coins, but definitely mixing services. Initially, it was centralized mixing services were being used a lot, especially by dark web actors. And then, so like these are essentially controlled by one group of individuals and with a centralized server. And then, of course, entities like Tornado Cash or decentralized mixing services where the service itself is a lot harder to target, but you can definitely see kind of the flow of funds, and you're seeing that a lot of the big criminals and cyber criminals are using these mixing services because it's transparent that they're using them. Following, let's say, a hack or exploit is definitely a lot harder to deal with for law enforcement because of that kind of less centralized nature, and a lot of times you don't really know who to target, and there's a lot of discussion and arguments about who is responsible. Is it the developers? Is it the node validators? Like, who's responsible for this money going through? Can you sanction a technology? That's another debate that's really been going around. So there's a lot of intricacies in the kind of privacy coin / mixer space.
Did that answer your question, Guy?
It did, yes, it did. And well, it's kind of heartening to. I mean, one thing that I take from that is that privacy coins perhaps are being used in large measure for actual privacy rather than just crime, which I think is good to hear. I have another couple of questions. Again, I know we're running short on time, but I just wanted to take things back to. We've obviously covered how individuals can keep themselves safe and the sort of security procedures that they need to be aware of. And I think it was Lily touched earlier on when we were talking about particular projects and protocols being exploited. Lily, I think, mentioned Ronin. That was exploited because of they managed to gain access to. They only had a few signatories, I think, to the smart contract. So my question is to all the speakers: when it comes to crypto projects in particular, is one of perhaps the best ways that they can keep themselves safe to decentralize as much as possible? Is that going to make it ultimately harder for hackers and exploiters to go about their work if projects are, quote, sufficiently decentralized?
I think there's a balancing act to do there where, on the one hand, the more centralized you are, the more that there could be a single point of failure, whether that's on-chain or off-chain. But on the alternative, the more decentralized you are, the more that you could potentially have something that doesn't work as it was intended. And when you can have more of those code exploits or just parts of the way that the protocol was designed that might not be what you envisioned when you created them. And so it's each protocol has different tolerances for either of those risks. And it's about taking a look at what seems to work best for you. And I think also to learn from past exploits that have happened and see how you can mitigate against that.
Great. Thank you, Julia. I just have one other question for the panelists. Oh, Tecmo, you have your hand up. You go ahead.
I was just going to add on to that and just say that I think it's less about decentralized versus centralized and more about smart contracts, having well-written smart contracts, because right now we've seen in the past few years that they're just getting exploited nonstop because of poorly written code.
So the code writers need to up their game. Can I also ask as a final question then? One thing that seems to happen with depressing regularity in the space is when a project gets hacked, a huge amount of money is stolen, a huge amount of crypto is stolen. It sits there on the blockchain. Everyone can see it, and quite often, if we're talking about a seriously large amount of money, that's extremely difficult to move, because the hackers are going to find that very difficult to cash out of. But something that happens that I always find a bit contentious is that quite often a bug bounty is offered. So, for instance, the hacker, if the hacker returns the funds, they can keep 10% of it or whatever. So my question to the speakers is this a practice that you agree with? Because I feel in a way that perhaps it's an encouragement to hackers. Because it says that they will get away with something, and quite possibly something that is a lot easier to move. Is that something any of you disagree with?
So coming from the traditional cyber space, I mean, bug bounty programs in not crypto, but just traditional tech have been around forever. I think there's definitely I think somebody could make a moral argument about they're financially incentivizing good behavior, but then at the same time, there's a very thin line between penetration testing and bug bounty. I think at the end of the day, it is crowdsourcing talent to find your vulnerabilities, and clearly vulnerabilities that you've missed. I mean, usually, again, going back to the traditional tech side, something's not going to get put up for bug bounty until that company has internally, with their very talented security team, has already looked for holes. So they're basically saying hey, we're going to crowdsource to the world. We think we have found everything. I'm sure we've missed something though. Help us find it. And so, coming back to, well, what's the alternative? Is the cost worth the benefit? And I think with in an industry like crypto, where there isn't a middleman, or there isn't federal deposit insurance, I think wanting to crowdsource, just as much talent to find holes in your code isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I'm more than willing to be proven wrong, I think this is a really rich conversation topic, and the other side of that argument is very valid as well.
Thank you, Meredith. Yeah, I wonder, maybe I used the term bug bounty a bit incorrectly as well. Perhaps this idea, I guess, of a successful hacker being rewarded or paid off, I guess, is just something that troubles me a little bit, because it seems to be kind of a reward for bad behavior almost. Tecmo, sorry, you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, I would say this is similar to the argument with ransomware, where you could say, hey, look, the FBI stance was always never pay ransomware, which in theory sounds great, because then you're de-incentivizing attackers. But in reality, you have a bunch of companies who need their data, and they value that more than, say, whatever, 10 Bitcoin is going to be fine for them to pay off 10 Bitcoin if it's $10 million worth of value. So it's same thing for these crypto hacks. If they're able to get X value back, then paying Y value for it is just a financial decision for them. Sure, it incentivizes more hacks, and we wouldn't like to see that. But unfortunately, the reality is that these companies that get hit with ransomware or crypto attacks, they're worried about their bottom line more than the future, attacks that could incentivize. So I think it's that balance of awareness. Like I said earlier about the code, I feel like, Meredith and I come from a cyber background where things have developed to a point where, there are sophisticated products out there, and sure, do they still get hacked? Yes, but it's much less, I feel like, in occurrence than in the crypto world, just because the crypto world is generally newer. You have less experienced people writing the code. They're new to Solidity or whatever code is involved. And so you're just seeing more attack vectors and exploits. I think as the industry grows and matures, you have bug bounties, you have penetration testing. I forgot I think it starts with an H. There's a company, I'm sure there are multiple companies out there that do sort of like code checking for people nowadays. As that matures, we're going to see fewer and fewer exploits and hacks. But it's that balance, Guy. It's always going to go to that balance, whether it's ransomware or crypto hacks. Of sure, do we want to incentivize this behavior? No, but the actual person or company that got harmed, they are going to do a financial assessment and decide, what is worth this to me as to get my data or platform back.
Thank you, Tecmo. That was a really great explanation, right? It's quite nuanced. It's not as black and white. Guy, I trust that that answered your question.
It did. Thank you, Tecmo, and thanks to all our other speakers as well.
Yes. So thank you, everyone, especially our speakers, for coming to speak with us. I know many of you don't really speak to retail on a very often basis. That's why we wanted to invite you to talk to us, to share your insights. So thanks for taking the time. Also in taking audience questions. The audience today asked some great questions. So I would love to see that keep happening in the future. We are time limited, so in case we didn't get to you and your questions, feel free to come back in the future and raise your hands. The next space, we are going to talk about Bitcoin and everything about Bitcoin, from mining, from Lightning Network, and everything else, and its outlook. So it's going to be a very big, interesting mega space. We encourage you to come back to our next space. With that said, let's give a warm thank you to everyone who has come to the space, all the speakers and the audience, and thank you yourselves for listening. Thank you for the support for Coin Bureau. We'll see you in the next space. And of course, thank you, Guy, for being a gracious host for all of us.
My pleasure, Dumpling. Thank you for co-hosting alongside with me. And yes, again, thanks to all our speakers. It really has been great to get your insight. And I hope we can tempt you to come back and speak on one of these again, because it's been fascinating and we've got so many more questions for you. So thank you for your time. Thank you to our audience. And yes, please do join us again in a couple of weeks' time. Thank you and good night.
See you. Bye.